Scott, hi. Thanks for coming on to Level Up's podcast. How are you?
I am doing great, Grant. Good morning. Nice to meet you.
I'm super excited to have you on our podcast. Your background is going to really complement the guests that we've had previously because I keep finding people in financial services and tech companies. And so I'm really excited to have someone who can talk a little bit different about another really important area of employment. So before we start and before we dive into those areas of interest, it would be really helpful for the listeners just to give a brief introduction to who you are and what you do, Scott.
Again, good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Sell. I serve as the Chief Talent Acquisition Officer for Mercy Health. Coming up on 12 years that I've been with Mercy. If you're not familiar with Mercy, we're a healthcare system headquartered and based out of St. Louis, Missouri, primarily occupy in the states of Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Kansas. Roughly about 55,000 caregivers that make up our ministry. I lead a team here, roughly about 120, primarily recruiters that really work to make sure we've got the talent to serve our patients. And, to say, relatively high volume here within Mercy. We've hired just shy of 24,000 caregivers last year. This year, our fiscal year runs July 1st through the end of June. As of yesterday, we're just slightly above 7,200 hires that we've made since July 1st. So off to a very busy start here.
and I mean, some of our listeners will be in awe of those numbers because, I mean, to recruit that many people in 1 year and have that responsibility, but then also an important area such as caregiving, that must be, a really challenging mindset. You've got to find 24,000 caregivers. I mean, 12 years maybe helps a little bit. How come you chose to go into this industry, and how come you've stayed for 12 years given all those high numbers?
So prior to joining Mercy, I've worked in information technology. I was with the .com. I was in hospitality, retail, but really had the opportunity. When I say I was called to Mercy roughly 12 years ago, and for me, it really was the opportunity to make a difference. And that's what Mercy really is all about. I mean, we provide great quality healthcare to all of our patients. And I've always said, regardless of, whether one has insurance or not, we never turn anyone away. It's not the way Mercy operates. We're a healthcare ministry. And when I met with the executive team here, roughly 12 years ago, they talked about transforming healthcare. And it wasn't, hey, this is a marketing cliche, or doesn't that sound really good? But there was a real commitment. They understood that the healthcare system, when compared to other industries, was somewhat broken. I mean, it's a difficult thing to navigate. It lacks transparency. So, really having an opportunity to come in, and at that point, being new to healthcare 12 years ago, to be able to kind of bring in different lessons that I've learned along the way. But we recognized that we were entering a real interesting challenge within healthcare, which is when you look at hiring, regardless of industry, for every 5 people that retire today, you only have 2.5 people entering the workforce. So you've got a number crunch working against us, again, regardless of industry. But then when you put yourself into the healthcare industry, we've got people that are living longer, right? Life expectancy has gone up. We've got a higher demand for healthcare. So we've got a higher demand and a shrinking workforce. And I thought, wow, that's a real challenge. And that's something that I wanted to be part of.
Yeah, and in some ways, I'm not sure perfect storm is the right terminology, but that's what I hear a lot of people say. There's a perfect storm going on when you're trying to think about all the challenges that are presented in healthcare recruiting. And I think, look, I think it's amazing, and that's why I'm super excited to have you on this podcast, right? Because that is a really impactful a place to be, and I'm sure that you and that the team of over 100 people are really placing true talent, right? True talent into that can make a difference. So yeah, I'm just super excited to have you on. I just wanted to say a huge thanks.
Well, appreciate that.
So let's launch into the questions because, having exposure to that volume must mean that you've got some great insights and some, had to look at certain areas of interest that our listeners want to talk about. And AI has been a huge factor in many people's lives throughout the last year, 18 months. But I'm really interested in the impact that it's had on recruitment and specifically volume recruitment, because that's hopefully where it can save the most time. So my first question to you is, how do you envisage AI transforming the recruitment process over the next few years? And, I suppose what radical changes do you think HR professionals need to prepare for?
Yeah, another great question here. So I will say that, certainly when it comes to AI, Mercy has been at the forefront of technology, innovation, specific to patient care. So, robotic surgeries and all of those things. But when you look from the human element of it, from the HR side of things, we're just truly getting started. And there's a lot of opportunity. So we talk about the number of hires that we make. And Mercy's got a great reputation in the communities that we operate in. And having a strong brand, we drive roughly 40,000 plus applications into our applicant tracking system on a monthly basis. Now, while those numbers sound great, the reality is the old school of I've got 40,000 applications and I'm going through them one by one to see who's got the right skill set, who's got the right background, very time consuming. And we have to move very quickly. So, I think when you look at AI in its early stages within recruitment, it was pretty good about sort of pulling up those buzzwords, right? Someone responds to a posting and if they had the right keyword in there, it might align. But we also recognize that was very primitive in AI because it wasn't always correlating with the exact skill set. I mean, it could have just been a word and could have been listed as a reference, but not necessarily baked into their daily routine. So part of what we've really looked to do is we want our recruiters spending as much time engaging with the candidates. They want people that have gotten into recruitment, they do so because they want to help people, they love giving back, but they love having those conversations and high touch moments. You're not providing those when you're doing a lot of administrative, scrolling through resumes, which one hits the mark, and those things. So where we've really started with AI is to really help predict, based on applicants when they apply, who has the greatest likelihood of being hired. So we've used a technology that really provides an algorithm in terms of, based on these 100 resumes, here's your top 7 in terms of having the greatest likelihood of being hired. And again, it doesn't necessarily dig into the skill set per se, as much as what's the probability of being hired based on other previous hires that you've made. So that has saved us a tremendous amount of work. And we really feel like there's much more opportunity in that area. When we think about candidate and consumer experience, let's face it, when you're applying for a job, even those that have a best-in-class apply process, it's not nearly as simple and easy as it is going onto Amazon and ordering something and having it within 2 days, right? Or, a candidate today, they apply for a job and you'll get the automated generated email that, hey, we've received your information, but then they sit and they wait. As a hiring leader looking at it, I may even be considered for an interview. We've really looked to sort of provide almost similar to technology to if anybody's ordered a Domino's pizza, where you see from the moment you ordered the pizza to the moment it's out of the oven and the moment that it's on the road, really looking to provide that same visibility and transparency for the candidate experience. So they know, okay, I've applied. Oh, great. Now I can see that my information has gotten to a hiring leader. I can see that I'm going to be called for an interview. Some cases I can see that I've been, that I haven't moved forward. But I think people just want to have that sense of knowing where do I sit in this process? So I think that we can provide a much greater candidate experience by really providing some of those AI functions that are out there that we just need to further leverage.
And I love that. And by the way, Domino's is not my favorite pizza. There are other pizzas out there, but because of that app, I just always default to Domino's because I love the fact that I know when my pizza's being cooked. It's so strange. And it's funny you mentioned that because I do think that, you know, using automation and AI to prioritize workloads to show transparency is actually really where we should be because so many people are talking about it not being transparent. And so I love that example. That's a great example. And what do you think is going to be, you know, what kind of what we're going to start to see that's much more radical or in the AI front? You know, is there do you anything you're predicting or seeing that might happen?
Yeah, I think a lot we anticipated and really plan to explore as it comes to internal mobility. Because again, when we talk about recruitment, there's always this mindset of we're out there on the external market and we've got to look for talent. That should never not be a priority. But we also have 55,000 caregivers within our ministry today. And we have a responsibility and a commitment to continue to grow and develop them. So what we don't always have a real good vantage point view on is, you know, hey, what did Susie do before she joined Mercy? We know what Susie's doing today, and we know what her role encompasses. But Susie might have had 3 different jobs before she joined Mercy, and she might have utilized some skill sets and some talents that we're not even aware of. So being able to have technology and AI that really matches up, hey, we're gonna build out a new business unit, and we're looking for these talents and skills where you can even look within your own internal workforce to say, you know what, we've got a number of people under our own roof that have the ability to do these things and be able to tee those same jobs up to internal as well as continue to look exploratory on the outside.
And I think that leads us nicely into our next question, right? Because I do feel that, you know, talent, the word talent and what that actually describes in terms of the structures within a organization, it is going to shift, right? So I think we think of talent as talent acquisition, period, like external talent acquisition. And actually, you know, HR teams as a whole are evolving quite a lot. You know, we're seeing, you know, the people HR team structure and where talent sits and whether talent development and talent acquisition join more closely. That is quite a hot topic right now. So I wonder, what are your thoughts on, you know, as the HR team, people teams structures evolve, what key roles and skills do you think are going to become essential over the, you know, the coming months and years?
Yeah, so I would say a number of things. One, certainly having a stomach for change. It's a rapidly changing environment, and quite honestly, I'm hard pressed to think of, you know, any industries today that aren't going through significant change. Maybe with the exception of government and some of those things, but for the most part, I mean, what's a priority today, you know, 3 months from now may be completely different. So having that ability to shift gears seamlessly and really be able to move. So I think that ability to adapt, that ability to adjust. I think digital dexterity is also an incredible piece. I think that while we talk about, you know, recruiters and, you know, want to provide that high touch experience, and a lot of that is still those people skills, but you have to be equally adept at being able to navigate technology and be able to leverage it, not be afraid of it. And sometimes you find, you know, someone that's maybe a little bit too far to one end, too far to the other side. We do have some positions that, hey, you know, this is completely backdoor, and all you're going to be doing is technology. And we've got others that are much more front forward facing. But those that he can combine the blend of both of those things will be much better prepared to really shine as we continue to morph through these new, you know, eras here.
And what do you think about kind of the delineation between talent and the traditional HR structures? I mean, well, because, you know, we hear this age-old story that kind of traditional HR is transactional, and then you're looking at kind of business partner. I mean, do you have any views on how talent professionals and people professionals are going to need to adapt?
Yeah, no, and you bring up a really good point. I mean, human resources as a whole, regardless of industry, often it's transactional. We need people, so they recruit people. We need benefits. Benefits provides benefits. All of those things. But where I've really seen in my 12 years here with Mercy is where we are sitting at the table with our strategic operational leaders, really as we're looking at forecasting. As we're looking at going into new markets, what does the talent look like in that market? I mean, what are we going into? What are we going to be competing up against? What's the competition look like? What's the number of jobs compared to number of applicants? Like really taking a more holistic look at everything. So I believe that for us to be effective and to stay ahead of everything that we need to in this ongoing talent war. You can't sit back and wait for the after the fact stuff. You need to stay in the front end. I think it's forecasting. Obviously, we tap into historical, perspectives and those things, but a lot of those things become already somewhat, they're no longer apply as we're moving into the new future. So you really got to be able to not only be able to stay one step ahead, but I'd say really it's staying 5 steps ahead. I mean, like our strategy today, here we are 2024. I can tell you at Mercy, we're always focused on a 5-year strategy plan. So everything we're talking about is strategy 2030. And what does that look like? And it's a whole different experience, very focused on the patient, very focused on the consumer, which includes the candidate. And I would tell you that it really is for us to be that, to not be viewed as a transactional partner. It's really being able to get in there, identify where are the shortages going to come from, what does a position look like 5 years from today, and what different skill set will that require than what we've got today. And then again, let's look internally to see, can we train and develop those skill set with the team that we've got, or do we need to continue to tap in on the outside? And then what do those skill sets and talents look like? But I want to go to the point of talent, because I do think that with that, it's a term that's often used very loosely. You don't hear anybody saying we're looking for the untalented. Everybody's looking for talent. But what does talent mean? And I would tell you, like here within Mercy, and I believe we're not isolated to this, but I would tell you that for us, it's really understanding sort of that cultural compatibility and alignment. So, because if that piece doesn't mesh up, if our values and the caregivers' values don't align, doesn't matter what skill set, talents they have, they're not going to be happy. We're probably not going to be happy. So we really look for that cultural compatibility and that alignment of values. The other piece that I'll say is we're very heavily focused on strength management. So if you've ever done anything like Strength Finders or Myers-Briggs or those kind of things, we use a tool very similar. And it's not to say, hey, what's wrong with this person? We want to know what's right. What are those natural talents that if we hire this individual into a role within Mercy, we want to be very intentional and deliberate of how we do that. Are we putting this caregiver in a position where they get to play to their natural strengths and talents all day long? Because when we do it right, the beautiful thing, Grant, is you get to do what you love and you enjoy, but every couple of weeks you get a paycheck to boot. So it's a really nice scenario when you can make it all come together like that.
And actually, I think you've hit the nail on the head, right? Talent is everyone's responsibility. If you don't have the talent that's happy, you're going to constantly have to refill the bucket, constantly having to refill all the time. And so I really like that definition of like talent is the cultural considerations and the cultural kind of additives that come, or even those that align to what culture you're trying to emanate within the business. And I think that's everyone's problem. And I think, to your earlier point, talent is kind of the cross section between HR, because yes, there are transactional tasks, but everyone from a people, HR, or talent or recruitment, whatever you want to call it, needs to think holistically about where we're going with that rapid change. Because as you said, nothing stands still now. So it is a constant evolution. And so that is a cultural aspect that you need to have in yourself, but also make sure you're bringing to the business, you're bringing the culture adds for those changes. And for me, that makes this area of any business super exciting. I think if you lean into the behavioral aspects, the skills aspects, the understanding personalities and approaches, for me, I find that fascinating. I know some people think it's a bit airy-fairy, and don't really believe in it. But for me, it's fascinating because actually it's something that you can pin culture to. It's something that you can pin how people feel and act in their role too. And I think that's an important part of more than just skills, right?
Without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, I always say, right or wrong, we spend more time in the workplace than we do at home. And, so it's, we don't try to use the cliche of, come join our family, Grant, because, with family, you don't have the ability to pick and choose that, right? Family is who family is. But when it comes to your work life, you have the opportunity to pick where you're going to work, and you have the opportunity to pick who you're going to work with. So that becomes a very critical piece of who we are. And, quite candidly, I mean, when we recruit caregivers into our ministry, a big piece of what we hear in terms of why did you choose us versus someone else? It was really, it's the people. We love the people. So when you go back to the talent piece and projections and how do we really make sure that we're not, sort of reactive, but we're transforming everything. It doesn't matter what technology you have. It doesn't matter, all the little gadgets and all the cool things that separate one organization from another. People are still the biggest differentiator, regardless of industry. So within Mercy, we know it's the quality of care. We really look for individuals that have a heart for what they do. And I'll give you a real case example. We talk to our recruiters and we say, when you look to make a hire, put yourself in the position that when you make this hire, this is someone that if your loved one, your mother, your father, your husband, your wife needed health care, is this somebody that you would want treating them? And sure enough, I mean, we had a situation here literally just within the last 60 days where one of my longtime recruiters, her husband had a medical emergency, got brought into Mercy. It was truly a life and death situation. Blood clots in the leg that can go up into the lungs, and the nurse who came in to treat and was the first point of contact within Mercy was someone that this recruiter had just hired, literally within the last 12 months. And so it all kind of really came together of that the importance of, hey, we're not just filling jobs. We have to put ourselves in the shoes of the patient and making sure that anyone that comes in, that we know that they're going to deliver the quality of care that we're noted for and that people deserve.
I love that, and this is why I love the healthcare profession as a whole so much, because of that circular. In my eyes, it's rewarding, right? Really rewarding. But I do want to pick up on, this aspect of agility. You mentioned about it not being, things aren't going to stand still, right? We're kind of constantly changing, and that is we're not in the industrial revolution anymore. We're really in a completely different technology revolution, right? And what worked then doesn't work now. And what I'm quite interested in is how can HR, recruitment, TA teams stay agile and responsive to rapid changes in large organizations like Mercy? Because we hear large organizations are usually quite clunky, they're hard to move. And surely agility must be the key thing needed to meet that current demand.
Right. No, it's so true. I mean, it's I can think of organizations that sometimes the bureaucracy and some of the delays are very self-inflicted. Well, we've got a process and we need to do this. I will tell you that we've got a senior leadership team led by our CEO who is all about what worked yesterday throw that one out the window. Like we have to continue to push the bar, think of things differently. And, again, everything really is with the patient and our consumer in mind. So I think organizations have a tendency to what's best for us, or, hey, we're going to build this process because it makes it really easy for us. It'll be easy to monitor. It'll be easy to manage. Well, what's best and easy for us often isn't what's best and easy for the consumer and for the patient. So we almost have to take a reverse sort of approach with this, put ourselves in those shoes, and then really look at it and build it from that way. Because it's amazing at how the outcome will be completely different when you look at it from that vantage point versus, hey, HR team and partners, let's make this efficient for us. But not having the end user in mind. And so that's a big piece that I think we've really focused on, that we often work backwards versus, hey, we're going to start from our own needs.
And I think that is a crucial part of agility. If you think about the end person who's going to get an interaction from all of the things that you do, then you could probably get there faster, right? You don't have to think about your process, improve that, then the next project, then the next project. You can just think, okay, how do we improve it for that person? And it just drives agility, even in the most complex and large organizations. That's fascinating. So, and I think largely, you're right. Where the overcomplication exists is where we've put processes in where we look just internally and we don't think about the external factors like the candidate experience. But touching on the, touching on the workplace of the future and focusing on that remote and hybrid work, I'm interested in how remote and hybrid work models are impacting talent sustainability for you, and what adjustments have you made to kind of adapt to the changes that have come?
Yeah, I love that question. So I will share that prior to the pandemic, we had already started moving to somewhat of a hybrid model, which in healthcare was really somewhat unheard of because other industries that I've worked in, the recruiter did not need to live or be based in the area where they were recruiting. But in healthcare, they felt like, hey, you've got to be here. I've got to see it. But we were able to really sort of incrementally shift away from that in some regards to where, again, a hybrid approach, maybe 2 days off site, 3 days in the office and those kind of things. But when the pandemic hit, we went 100% remote. And I will say that we've kind of maintained that. Although what I have really noticed, along with other senior operational leaders, is when you're not close to the work, there, especially in recruitment, it can start feeling very transactional. Again, the life of a recruiter is your successes are very short-lived. I can tell you today, Grant, nobody's going to call me on the phone to say, Scott, I want to thank you for one of the 24,000 hires you made last year. But it will ring sometime today to say, hey, where are we at with the 5,000 openings that we have, right? And that's just that's the world we live in. So from a recruiter, I filled 20 positions this week, but I look in my queue, I've got 30 new ones that need to be approved. And so when it's 100% remote and they don't get to come in and they don't see what our caregivers are doing and the quality care that they're providing and really what the net result is of the talent that we hire, it has a very good likelihood of feeling transactional. So I will tell you, we have recently shifted to a much more hybrid approach. So it's not, hey, Grant, I want you to come into the office and Tuesdays, Thursdays, and be here from 9 to 5, and you're sitting behind in an office on WebExes and Zoom calls all day long, things that you could do from home. But what we are looking for is when you are coming in, let's make it high impact experiences, like getting with the hiring leader, sitting down and saying, what, looks like we filled 30 positions for you over this last 4 months. I'm looking and seeing that we've already lost 10 of them. Is there something that we're missing? What any sort of pattern or theme that you've seen with what we're losing? Is there something where me as a recruiter, I can be more transparent, provide a better job preview, but really having those strategic conversations so that we're becoming better partners. So really, it's long gone is the time, and especially in recruitment, to where I need to have somebody here because otherwise I don't know if you're doing your job. We've got all the data and all the statistics at our fingertips to tell you whether or not you're doing the work. But I think especially in healthcare, I do think that if you're so far removed to where you're not coming in and seeing the output of your work, it has a tendency to where it could truly feel like I'm just doing a job. And that's that would be a failure on my part as a leader for someone to feel that. Yeah, I think flexibility is the key. And I think that, that's what caregivers, applicants of any industry, when you look at what they're looking for today, flexibility is important. And I think that specific to healthcare, we haven't always been real flexible. I mean, I can tell you early in my time here, we would be talking to a nurse candidate, and nurse candidate would say, you know what, I can only work 3 days a week. And on those 3 days, I can only work 4 hours. And we're looking at our requisitions and we're saying, well, we've got, 8-hour shifts and we've got 10-hour shifts. And so we basically would be turning this person away. Now, fast forward to 2024, that's not happening today. You know what? If I've got a highly talented caregiver that can give us 3 days a week, 4 hours a shift, you know what? We're going to find a way to make that work. And I think that same thing applies to the people we lead in the workplace. So,
and there's just so many facets to this hybrid versus remote versus that meets a talent model. And so I think you're right. I think for me, I think that hybrid approach with choice has got to be the future. Looking at all these shifts we've talked about, like there's technological shifts, there's departmental divisional shifts, there's candidate experience shifts. There's just so much going on. How do you kind of anticipate the relationship between employer and employees changing as this continues, and what implications do you think that has for HR?
Yeah, no, it's great question. And again, going to probably date myself here a little bit, but I think earlier in my career working for a leader, and the leader was, kind of like, I don't care what you do outside the workplace. I only need to know what you do when you're here. And while I never had children, I did speak with other of my colleagues, which was, I don't care if your kid's got a soccer game tonight, the job and work comes number one. I can't believe that philosophy worked well back then, but it certainly doesn't work well today. It's again, our caregivers give a lot of themselves coming in every single day. And the one thing that employers have to realize is this is a partnership. This is no longer, hey, you work for me, I own you, and then this is what it's going to be like. It's you get what you give, and vice versa. So, I think that, for us, I think within Mercy, we recognize that that people's lives change, that maybe today working 40 hours a week works great. But guess what? 3 months from now, they're having a baby and they need to alter their approach. We have to be able to have the model that can shift with their needs. It's more about us fitting their needs than them fitting our needs. We have to improvise and adjust in that regard. So I think that's one piece. And then, using the hypothetical example I gave you about, I just need to know about you at work. I would tell you, I think the opposite is so important. I mean, like if I don't know what brings my people and the caregivers in every day, and what motivates and inspires them, and what keeps them up at night, what gets them up in the morning. Like if I don't have those conversations to truly know everything about them, I have a really difficult time, a more difficult time in terms of really bringing out the best in who they are. So I think it's, I think we do. I think we have to. I think HR departments have to, and all facets within the organization really have to take the time to get to know their people and view them more than just, hey, your employee number, and this kind of thing, but to really know who they are and what brings them in. I think investing in people is important, especially, through the conversation we've talked today, which is all the rapid changes in AI. I mean, I know that I certainly would not have spent my last 12 years here at Mercy if I felt like I was doing the same thing today that I was 12 years ago when I joined. Like, I need to be continue to be pushed. I need to be challenged. I need to feel like the organization's investing in me, trying to bring out the best in who I am, and keeping me up on the latest trends and all of those things. We have to do that across the entire board. So I think it's, you make an investment in your caregivers, and you show genuine appreciation, and you adhere to the flexibility to make sure we're meeting their needs, because when we meet their needs, they'll meet yours.
Yeah, and I love that, and it's still quite radical for many organizations, right? That is still a challenge, because it's somewhat easy to just default to a carrot and stick approach. We pay you money, you do X, everyone just let's just that's actually probably the easy route, right? Like, the hard route is actually getting to know someone, knowing what ticks, trying to think about how holistically you keep them in the org for the next 5 to 10 years and match your 5 to 10 year strategy. Like, that's complex, and it takes a lot of team, a lot of thinking, and a lot of focus. Final question, and Scott, I could talk to you all day. I've really enjoyed the questions. I've got so many other questions I could ask you, but we just don't have time. But I think final question, particularly for our listeners, is, we're all about elevating the world of work. Like, that is why we do what we do at Level Up. That's why we do our programs. It's, how can we elevate the world of work? How can we create opportunities? How can we level up? It's in our name. I'm interested in your advice to those that might be earlier in their career than you and I. Someone maybe first few years in HR or talent. What advice would you give them? Or even if I said it another way, what would you tell yourself back then if you had the hindsight of being able to go back and talk to yourself?
Yeah, great questions. And so first off, I do want to acknowledge the work that Level Up is doing. I feel your mission and what you do, completely different industry, but I think really aligns well with who Mercy is, which is, that's everybody has a seat at the table, just a matter of what seat. I think it's a commitment to investing in others and really helping people become the best that they can. So I love the work that all of you are doing there at Level Up. I think it shows a commitment to others. It shows commitment to making the world a better place, and it's a very pay it forward approach that you guys use, which is equipping others to be their best selves. So just wanted to say that because I really do. I've always admired since being introduced to Level Up the work that you're doing. And then for the second part of your question, looking back at myself, in years, I think there's I think earlier in my career, I became a leader, relatively early. And I'd like to say, that, it's hard work and treating people right and all of those things. But sometimes it's being at the right place at the right time, having people that believe in you and invest in you. There are a number of reasons that it happened. But I think early in my leadership career, I really felt that, hey, they've empowered me to be the leader. I need to know it all. And I will tell you, if there's anything that I've learned 12 years in Mercy, if they need to hire somebody that knows it all, in fact, Mercy's got the wrong leader of their talent acquisition team, because I don't know it all. But I have learned that by surrounding myself with a diverse team, people that come from different walks of life, different perspectives, it really, when we look to shape a decision and you bring in that type of collaboration, boy, the output is super energizing, and typically we hit it right. We do it the right way. So I think that's one piece. The other thing is, I think back earlier in my career, I would tell you that I think back to many of my early performance appraisals in my career, and generally they would tell you all the things you're doing really good, but when it came to the time, hey Scott, here's the area where we need you to improve. A lot of what they said, Scott, you're just too nice. You're too nice of a guy. You don't always be so nice. And I thought to myself, I go home, never had a problem sleeping, because I thought, well, if the worst thing they can say is I'm too nice, probably not bad. But I have, through the years, I've recognized there's a difference between being nice and there's a difference between being kind. And nice sometimes was, gosh, I've got this coworker and I know they're really working hard, and God, it's not due to lack of effort, but they're just missing this piece. And I wasn't always as direct in terms of, hey, this is how we're going to fix it, and this is what I've observed. This is what, let's put together a strategy and a game plan of how we fix this. So I think I was more nice then. But I would tell you today, I'm much more kind, because if somebody's not delivering, they know it, they feel it, and you can't fix what you don't know. So I have evolved to be much more of a kind leader, which I can still be very diplomatic, still be very caring, and hey, this isn't about me, but this is how do I make you better. But I think it's being able to separate those two. So those, I think, are two important lessons that I've learned along the way.
Well, I think they're great lessons for our listeners. We are when we're younger, I feel like we're kind of told, knowledge is power, knowledge is power. But what we don't realize is that it's not only your knowledge that you have to have used for the power. And, and why that's such a nice thing for you to say is because it finishes the podcast really well, because knowledge can come from anywhere, right? You can get the right team around you. You can so yes, knowledge is power, but it's not, you don't have to have your particular knowledge. And I hope that things like this podcast delivers knowledge to other people to help them have more power in their decision making. So that's a great, great piece of advice for those in that early group. Scott, it's been an absolute pleasure. I just want to say again, thank you so much for getting me in your diary. And I really enjoyed this, and I hope our listeners do too.
I have truly enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate you letting me join you. And like you, Grant, I feel like we could have spoke for several more hours. I really, truly thank you for making me comfortable. And again, I hope this is really valuable and beneficial for those who have an opportunity to listen to it. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. Stay connected by subscribing to the Level Up With Us podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or find us on our website, leveluphcs.com. Tune in for the next episode of Level Up With Us. Until next time.